I guess the love of pinball predates civilization.
It is no secret that since their early days, Sonic games have been influenced by pinball in various ways, from stage design and props to the fast-paced arcade-like gameplay, not to mention the various pinball stages and pinball spin-offs the franchise has given us over the years. To give you an idea of how common pinball is in Sonic, in the 34 mainline games listed on Sonic's Wikipedia page, about 15 of them have pinball make some kind of appearance. To draw a comparison, Miles Tails Prower, Sonic's sidekick and best friend for more than 30 years, is playable in 14 games. So today I want to talk to you about these pinball stages and games in order from the earliest to the latest in the series. Okay, let's get into it. Pinball was first introduced to the series in 1991's Sonic the Hedgehog on the Game Gear system. More specifically, in these special stages you could unlock after completing a level with at least 50 rings. You would be transported to a pinball stage with flippers that are really small for some reason. Well, at least they control well. There's nothing much to say about these stages honestly, except that it's pretty funny when Sonic does this. They're just not really up there as far as special stages or pinball stages go, so we'll now be moving on. Moving on to the first appearance of a full-on pinball section, which came in 1992 with the second Sonic the Hedgehog game's iconic Casino Night Zone, which also introduced children to the joys of gambling. The zone includes different pinball tables, which usually have a slot machine that you'll be aiming for to get rings. Also, the end of the last zone has you fighting Eggman inside one of these pinball tables. Also worth mentioning is how well Sonic controls in these pinball sections. Sonic is easy to control while launched up, and the flippers launch you pretty high, so you'll have plenty of time to align yourself into a desired position. Easily one of the best in the franchise. Okay, now we have Sonic CD, a game released to the Sega CD in 1993. More specifically, pinball can be found in the second zone of the game, Collision Chaos, and its boss fight. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it isn't very good. First of all, the flippers just feel way too snappy when playing, and Sonic often just straight up faces through them. Not to mention the fact that they don't play any unique sound effects. These factors make using flippers in this game much less satisfying and overall feels more unfinished than in Sonic 2. Also, fighting Eggman in the Collision Chaos boss zone is not fun at all and can take you anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes. Also, moving on to the first pinball game on this list, we have Sonic Spinball, which is also the main reason I'm even making this video. When Sega realized they wouldn't be able to release Sonic 3 in time for the 1993 holiday season, the American wing of the Sega Technical Institute was tasked with developing a game to fill that Sonic-shaped void in everyone's hearts. So a spin-off game set in the Sad AM cartoon universe began development, and after just 2 months of development, Sonic Spinball was released to the Mega Drive and Master Systems in November of 1993, and, in an alternate timeline, was the recipient of critical acclaim and praise, setting a new course for Sonic the Hedgehog as a pinball icon. But instead, we ended up getting one of many rushed games this franchise has given us over the years. Yeah, sadly the game wasn't that great. Okay, so you start this game after this cutscene where Tails attempts to get rid of Sonic once and for all by dropping him into the ocean, knowing full well that he can't swim. After that, you drop into the sewer system of Robotnik's fortress, where your task is to collect Chaos Emeralds by opening their containers and finding a boss that definitely scared some poor fucker that played this. Then rinse and repeat for 3 more times, the game's over. Okay, so I want to start out with some positives because I do have a lot of good things to say about this game. First, I think visually the game looks great, and I like the art direction they took and how they gave each stage its own color palette and unique feel. The game's also, nowadays, very infamous for being pretty fucking unforgiving, with a lot of ways to push back on any progress you make. Every stage has a layout which is different enough to feel interesting to explore and play. This is also aided by the amazing soundtrack provided to us by the game's composers, Howard Drossen, Brian Coburn, and Barry Blum. There are also pinball bonus stages. How original, I know. These play more like traditional pinball, which already makes them the best part of the whole game, gameplay-wise at least. Also, a small detail I like is how Sonic's eyes follow the ball's movement, and the fact that you actually play as Sonic's balls, and not just some boring-ass steel balls, helps set the game apart from other pinball games visually. I mean, a pinball game where you also have some control over your ball after you've launched it isn't a bad idea. Like previously stated, it can work wondrously if done right. It's just that in spinball you can easily start bouncing off from walls if you just even lightly touch them. The game also shares a big flaw with other classic games, that being its limited field of view, which can occasionally make it really difficult to see what's in front of you if you haven't already memorized the entire stage layout, and also a lack of visibility in a pinball game is not a good quality. This wouldn't be as big of a gripe to me if you just had to collect a number of points to progress, like in most pinball games, but here your main objective instead is collecting a set amount of Chaos Emeralds after you've completed a puzzle that opens one of their containers at a time, which is pretty time consuming if you don't know what you're doing, and just increases the likelihood of you falling into some death trap and having to start all over again. Chalk it up to me being bad at the game, but it just really got fucking annoying in the later stages, as the pinball arenas got larger and the puzzles got more complicated. Also, I've heard that the final boss of the game is pretty difficult, but honestly, I never got that far in the game, so I wouldn't know. It was a game that could have been a lot better had they just tweaked the controls and collision detection and used smaller boards. But it was just way too ambitious for a game with such a short development window. But even after all is said and done, I still think the first two stages are fun experiences on their own, even if they share many of the game's flaws, and after that the game does become just a chore to play. But I want to emphasize the fact that I did enjoy the first two levels, and I would seriously recommend you try out this game if you have $5 to spare, or maybe you own the Sonic Mega Collection. Overall a mixed bag you may or may not like. Many people did. And then there's the Game Gear port, which is just straight up awful. Starting off, the levels have been given a lot more empty space for no reason at all. And combining that with the game's limited FOV, the stages are even more frustrating to navigate. Sonic also feels a lot more floaty, and the power he's flung at when hitting objects is a lot less consistent this time around. Also, the visuals received a significant downgrade, which, although understandable, given that the Game Gear is a lot less powerful than the Mega Drive or Master System, just thought that it's worth mentioning since I did praise Spinball's visual direction earlier. In 1998, Sonic Adventure brought Sonic into the third dimension, and with it came pinball as well. And this time, there's actually two pinball minigames, one of them being Sonic theme and one of them being night theme. Starting off with the designs of the pinball tables, they both look really nice, while also using completely different color palettes and obstacles that help the boards feel very distinct from each other. There are also paths that lead you to separate smaller pinball arenas where you can earn extra points without fear of losing a life. Sadly, you can't control Sonic when playing pinball like you could in previous titles, but you can shake the table to nudge Sonic in a certain direction, but the effect it has on his movement is barely noticeable, at least for me it was. Also something weird I noticed is that Sonic randomly just slows down when sliding down the board, but also just sometimes at completely random moments. The Night Pinball game also occasionally gives you this cutscene, which plays out for way too long and becomes pretty boring to sit through after a while, as it repeats each time you've gathered a certain amount of cards. Now going back to 2D Sonic for a minute, we have Sonic Pocket Edition, which was developed by SNK and released to the Neo Geo Pocket Color in 1999. Being another pocket console game, my expectations were set low due to previous experiences with the Game Gear, but I was pleasantly surprised with how well pinball was implemented in this game. You can launch Sonic pretty high up with the flippers, and Sonic controls really well in the air. Also, this game takes full advantage of the pinball table setting in its version of the Casino Night Zone boss battle. You have a lot more objects to bounce off consecutively while also managing to hit Robotnik, though it still isn't a viable strategy as he can easily kill you if you hit him in the wrong spot. Still, I think it used pinball mechanics in a much better way than the Sonic 2 Casino Night Zone boss battle did. Hands down the best pinball mechanics by far in a pocket console game. Wait, what is that? It's of course Sonic Advance, developed by Dimps and released in 2001 to the Game Boy Advance. The game sold well and was given generally favorable reviews by critics and audiences alike, earning praise for its visual direction and sound design among other things, and it would be the first of many Sonic games developed by Dimps in the future. The third zone of the game, Casino Paradise, is this game's pinball-themed zone, though I believe it doesn't have actual pinball board sections, but it has flippers so it counts for the purposes of this video. Also, the zone feels a lot more like a carnival zone than a casino one, but maybe that's just me. Flippers in this zone are primarily used to give you a speed boost or help you reach upper parts of the level, and when Sonic is launched up by a flipper, you have almost complete control over how he moves when he is airborne, more so than in any other previous title. Still, something I don't like, this is a very small nitpick, but I don't like how bumpers barely give you any airtime at all in this game. Still, I really liked pinball in Advance, and I liked Advance overall. Now we've reached the last pinball spin-off on this list. Sonic Pinball Party was released also to the Game Boy Advance in 2003. The game has Sonic facing off against his friends in a pinball tournament to beat Eggman and save gambling animals that he's turned into his robot slaves. Alright. I won't dwell on this game for too long, as I'm really excited to talk to you about the next game on the list. Still, something noticeable right from the start is that you don't have blue balls anymore. Instead, you just have a regular steel ball. I liked how they used Supersonic Racing as a background tune at one point, and the pinball physics are fine, probably the closest thus far that they've gotten to actual pinball physics. I don't know, everything about this game is just like fine, it's good. I just really don't have much else to say about this game, it's just fine. And maybe because this is the only game on this list I didn't know even existed prior to playing it for this video. Alright, this is it. This is the peak of 3D pinball level design. Everything I could want from a pinball stage. And I'm only half joking here, mind you. 2003's Sonic Heroes has two pinball themed stages, those being Casino Park and Bingo Highway. Large parts of both levels are occupied by these big pinball boards with slot machines and a lot of area to move around and look for collectibles and hidden paths. Bingo Highway ups the tempo by throwing in, well, bingo highways that give you the ability to cross numbered areas on a bingo board to gain some extra rings while avoiding imminent death. Visually, I think out of these two, Casino Park is the better designed one, having this combination of purple and red with some pretty simple patterns that aren't too confusing to look at. This could just be a me thing, but I feel like the Bingo Highway pinball boards using mainly blue makes all the details on the board sharp, more annoying to look at than the more warm and gentle purples, reds and greens of Casino Park. The gameplay itself is kind of a mixed bag in this one though. The flippers have really good hit detection this time and launch hide. But the controls feel kind of floaty at times, and switching direction after you've already done so is next to impossible. Still, I think this was a very unique attempt at bringing pinball into a 3D environment, and I wish they could have tried to refine this idea they had into something better. Still, I find Casino Park to be my favorite 3D pinball stage in Sonic thus far. If only for the fact that it tried something new, and kind of succeeded honestly. Cue the worst game on this list, Sonic 4 Episode 1. From its lack of momentum gain or speed to the forgettable music and reused levels and boss fights, there is one thing Sonic 4 gets right. You can probably guess what that is. Again, Sonic controls pretty well during these pinball sections, and the forward dash actually really helps you get across longer distances. Also, this has got to be, design-wise, the most bare-bones version of the Casino Night boss battle on this list. Like, wow, 2 whole flippers and a bumper for each side? And not even a flipperboard background? Disappointing. But something I really want to praise this level for, this beautiful backdrop it uses. It's just a city from the original Casino Night Zone turned to 3D, but it looks so goddamn nice like this that I had to mention it. Like, I'm convinced half of the budget of this entire game went into making this thing. Now, thanks to the Casino Night Zone DLC, pinball can also be experienced in Sonic Generations as well. As of recording, it's also the last game that gives you the ability to shake the pinball table to move Sonic, which is a shame because it was situationally useful here. Visually, the stage looks beautiful, with its neon lights lighting the nighttime background, and the pinball table using primarily blue, yellow and red in its design. This iteration of pinball also has the best sound design in the entire series. The board also lets you access tons of smaller areas and rooms where you can find coins to use in this slot machine. A really nice addition to Generations, and a good way to get Casino Night Zone to the game, though I still wish they could have added an actual stage for Casino Night Zone. Fortunately, we did get one on the 3DS port of Sonic Generations, because this time, instead of Chemical Plant Zone, Sonic 2 is being repped by Casino Night Zone. Sadly, the first act is just a 1-to-1 copy of the original level. That also includes the physics, which were adapted pretty well. Nothing else really to say, like I said, it's a 1-to-1 adaptation. And a good one at that. Out of all the things wrong in 2017 Sonic Forces, gameplay and story-wise, pinball fortunately isn't one of them. Sadly, this game's pinball zone doesn't have that much pinball in it. Only a small board at the start and some bumpers and flippers here and there in this stage. But physics-wise, it's fine. Although I wish the jump height could have been a bit higher. You can control Sonic mid-air, which is always a positive. I just wish that this stage would have featured an actual pinball section, like what we've gotten before. But what we got was alright in terms of the closest thing to a pinball zone in 2070's Sonic Mania would be Mirage Saloon, but I don't have a lot to say about it. The controls feel fine, it's just alright. It is pretty short though, which is sad, and I don't feel like it used pinball as a mechanic as much as it could have used. You can also get access to a pinball special stage, which became available with the 2018 Encore DLC, that you can enter through a goalpost if you have enough rings. The stage is visually pleasing, like just about everything in Mania is, and also a nice callback to Sonic's pinball special stages. How neat! Gameplay-wise, it feels fine, but it still lacks the ability to move Sonic around while he's on the board, which is a feature that helped add something extra to past pinball sections, while also making sense narratively. A shame, but overall, it's still a pretty neat special stage to have, but I'm probably not going to go back and play it for the sake of it, when there are stages that can offer a much better experience than this. Here's a fun fact. With the release of Sonic Frontiers this year, pinball has now been included in 5 mainline games consecutively. So, how is pinball in this latest addition to the franchise? It's alright. I definitely got excited the first time I got to the end of Chaos Island and saw a pinball minigame and had fun with it too, but comparing it to many of the best renditions and adaptations of pinball on this list, it's not up there. This is one of the few times Sonic isn't being used as a ball, and it's a visual gag that I've always liked when it's used, so it's a shame it isn't used in Frontiers. Although I do understand why you couldn't do this, because Sonic was literally dying at this point in the game, probably didn't have the energy. Also, it is made to be consistent with the theme of ancient machinery that's hidden on these islands. I just still prefer the personalized Sonic boards over this. It just feels kind of bland. Also, whoever designed these things, fuck you. Seriously. It's again a stage that can either take you 3 minutes or 15, depending on how lucky you get. And that's the list. I'm going to bed. See ya.